My day-to-day life, I think people make an assumption on the way I speak and maybe the way I look or the kind of job that I do, that I will come from an academic background, which I do in some ways, and therefore that filling in a form or making a mental calculation, working out finances or something like that, personal finances, that will be a breeze for me. And actually I still find certain things like just going to the bank and making, if I'm bringing in some checks, checking that I've put all the right information, I've filled everything in. And it seems a really simple thing, it's something I've done a million times, but every time I still seem to manage to get something not quite right. But I'll often forget the kind of sequence in ways that I need to do things. I plan the amount of time that a bus might take to get me from A to B, but I wouldn't, and it might be 15 minutes, and so I would leave the house 15 minutes before I needed to be somewhere, but I wouldn't have planned the time that it took for me to leave the house, look up, walk the 5 minutes down the road, wait for the bus, be there at the right time, then have the journey, then get off the bus and then get to my other place. And so I was forever late all the time, and I couldn't understand because the bus only took 15 minutes, so why was I late? I find it really frustrating that I still write often or instead of or form instead of for, and you'd think that having done it 50,000 times and having been aware of it, and as I'm writing it or typing it I'm thinking, now don't put the wrong one, I will still make these sort of mistakes, like they're programmed in me somehow. All the way through there's been situations where people have maybe just told me something, said, what I want you to do is I'd like you to find this book, it's called such and such, it's on the left, it's down the, it's on the left hand side of the bookshelf marked X, and it's in a box, and by this point I've already lost what you wanted me to ask, what you needed me to do in the first place. Like, this is completely unhelpful to me, trying to get me to follow directions and take on that information for something that I'm not sure it is, and quite often maybe in an unfamiliar territory. So I think there's often been times when I've kind of come back and said, look, I didn't really understand that. I think often people mistake or associate difficulties with spelling or reading or organisation with being a child. It's immature, it's a lesser status. As an adult you should be able to do these tasks. Colleagues being irritated perhaps by the time that it's taken me to produce certain documents, or that they feel again that I haven't spell checked things. That's been quite frustrating. I think I've been very fortunate though that since I've been very open about being dyslexic, that it's kind of in some ways a shield, not an excuse, but if you go in there and say, look, this is who I am, and I bring these fantastic things to the table, but I'm going to need some support on these areas, that most people will respond positively to that and will want to support you. I mean, lots of people who say, when I tell them I'm dyslexic, say, oh, I think I might be dyslexic as well. And I say, oh, well, this is how you can get tested. There's online. It may be that your employer has, through HR quite often, there are ways of getting you tested. This is really something you should pursue. And often people are really not keen for a whole host of reasons. And I do understand that you think, well, I've got to this age and I've survived, or I don't want my employer to know, or I don't want to be labelled like that. But I think what I say to that is that actually it's really helpful for a whole host of reasons to just know that you are dyslexic. I think to know for yourself, for your own self-esteem, it's not that I am just rubbish at this thing. There is a particular reason and there are ways to get over it. It makes a huge difference to how you see yourself, to how you view your capability and how you portray that to others. Having been someone who's been very pro equalities and has sort of been very aware of people with different difficulty, finding myself in that category was actually kind of difficult, was actually sort of okay, so this is something that I'm always going to have. Particularly when I'm tired, I think, oh God, it's all right for everyone else, they don't have these problems, they're okay, poor old me. And other times I think, this is just part of what makes me up, in the same way that my naturally blonde hair or, other things about me. It's just part of that, and I will find ways around that. I think sometimes it helps me come up with solutions to problems that other people don't seem to see. I think maybe it's led to my interest in kind of the arts, and generally on a good day it's something that I feel not proud of, but definitely not ashamed of. But the amount of times that when I say actually I'm dyslexic, 5 people in that room will say, I think I am dyslexic, my child is dyslexic, or actually I'm terribly afraid of being asked to go up and stand and write on a whiteboard. And I say, yeah, me too. I tell you what, we'll do it together. Being dyslexic has real advantages and strengths that people aren't initially aware of. The Disability Discrimination Act, it gives you a huge amount more power to be able to say, yes, I am disabled, I have a disability, it's dyslexia, and these are the ways that I would like help. It doesn't mean that people are suddenly going to say, well, you can't do this and you can't do that, and you won't get the job for this reason, or anything like that. If anything, it gives you back the power to say, these are the things I need. And I think all employees or all people in all walks of life have needs, have things they find difficult, but it's often very difficult to express that or to feel confident in doing that. And one of the things that being dyslexic, or knowing that I'm dyslexic for sure, having had that assessment, means that I'm able to approach my colleagues, approach my friends, my family, and my employer most importantly, and say, these are the things that I'd find really helpful. We're talking about small things that make my life easier, but more importantly, actually make me better. Knowing I'm dyslexic and having had the assessment means that I have a greater chance of fulfilling my potential, of being the best that I can be, and it makes a real difference to me in my life, but I also think to my colleagues as well, and the way that they view me, and as an employer, the way that they see me. She's not lazy, she's not rubbish at this thing, she's dyslexic, we'll help her in these ways, and she will continue to be, hopefully, a fabulous employee. Overall, I'm really pleased that I found out I'm dyslexic. It has made a huge difference, not just in being aware of things when I'm writing or reading or at work or filling in yet more forms, but in all sorts of other ways, like confidence, being aware of my strengths, being aware of the things that I'm good at, like the problem solving, which I think has come from having the difficulties with dyslexia. So I'd really encourage other people to come forward, and you don't have to tell anyone. You can speak to ULR, or you can speak to HR about this, and no one else has to know. But I think the main thing is not to let something like this get you down.